Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Your Age is Not Your Cage. Today, I have my special friend who has been on before, April Larson, and we are going to go deep into a subject that we feel very strongly about talking about, and it is about married sex. Biblical sex, sex within the context of marriage. And this is from two women with 20 plus years in the same marriage. We are both midlifers. April's in her 40s, I'm in my 50s, and we just want to speak into marriages, intimacy, sex lives, and we just dig deep and we open up and we share things that we hope and pray just speak to someone out there and speak to someone that may be dealing with the same things, and it gives them hope and it gives them the courage and the power and the strength to move forward in their marriage and to fight for their marriage and for their families and for their sex life and all the things. So I know you're going to love this one. It's a little longer than my normal, but I promise you it is packed with good info and you won't want to miss a minute. So stay tuned. April is next, and thank you for watching Your Age is Not Your Cage. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Your Age is Not Your Cage. And I have my special friend once again, April Larson, on here, who you have heard before. So, April and I are just going to get right into a really spicy, good conversation. But say hi, April, and just tell a couple quick things for those that haven't listened to you on here before.
Okay. Hi, everybody who's listening. Yeah, I'm April Larson, and I live in Boise, Idaho with my family. I have four kids, happily married. I am an esthetician and run my own business. I love the Lord, and I love empowering women. I love talking with women, encouraging them, and all sorts of stuff. So this has been fun.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to get into a topic that's not always talked about, maybe openly, honestly, vulnerably, but April and I want to talk about married sex, biblical sex, and what that has looked for us looked like for us in our own marriage, but just things we want to share to help women that may be going through struggles, challenges, and don't know who to talk to, don't know how to share. And so April and I are just gonna, get honest and candid and vulnerable, and just share some of the things that we've learned and that we've walked through. And we just hope that this would encourage somebody out there. And I always remind everyone we are not medical professionals or anything else. We are just here to share education, information, and just be here to speak into someone that might need to hear this today. So
Yeah.
I'm going to start by just us. There is a book called Married Sex, and it's one of the best books that I have read. And I will put all the information on anything we talk about in the show notes. But I'm going to read a little excerpt of that April and I are going to kind of then chat about a little bit. But it says the story of sex in your marriage is intended to reflect the greatest story of all time. Every marriage faces unique challenges to do this. At every stage of struggle, you are invited to connect your broken story of sex to the story of God's covenant love. The classic fairy tale couple who falls in love, has no problems, and experiences great sex all the time may be an alluring storyline to pursue. The story of God is messier and far richer than that. It's about a love that transcends all brokenness, selfishness, and sin. And that's just like, wow. And so we want to unpack that a little bit. April, I'll let you share, your thoughts on that.
Well, I think one of the things you and I that sort of prompted this discussion was so working with women and working on women. I obviously sometimes get to play therapist a little bit when they're on my table, and have found recently that there's quite a few women that are my age and in maybe marriages that are as long as mine or more. So we've been married for 20 years, just had our 20-year anniversary, and have not had sex for some of them up to two years, and their marriage is on the rocks, and they're unhappy. I have one individual who is having an emotional affair. So I think that just to start that off with, there was a definite concern in my mind of like, what's going on with our, and these are Christian women, you know. So I think that's where our conversation sort of started, and then this like what is going on inside their marriage, and one of the biggest things was that they weren't coming together, that there was no, their sex life was basically non-existent, you know.
Yeah.
But to the thing you just read, for me, that was, I was raised not around a healthy marriage to view. I didn't have a mom and dad together, and I didn't have really anybody in my circle, my influence, that could represent what a healthy marriage looked like. So all I had to go off of was movies I was watching, Hollywood, you know, that sort of thing. And that expectation started growing inside of me of, this is how a healthy marriage and a healthy sex life would look like, you know, which was not accurate. So for me, that little excerpt you just read was a realization I came to not that long ago. I mean, you know, years of therapy, years of marital therapy, and working on my own self, working on my relationship with the Lord, did I realize like that's not normal. That's not a normal expectation, or that's not what a healthy marriage looks like, kind of thing. And so it was a game changer for me when I stopped putting that expectation on myself and him, really, you know, that there had to be this perfect thing, and you have to, whatever, you know, come together this often, or and never fight, and all the different illusions that get created
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah. And always has to be some epic, amazing event, or, you know, I don't know. There's just, even when you were talking about all that, I thought about like romance novels
Yeah.
and things like that, because that's, I think, something a lot of women turn to. And all those out there that have read 50 Shades of Grey, I never read it. I have
Neither
no
did I.
desire to read it, and this is no judgment on anyone, but it's books like that, it's movies like that, that put a picture in men and women's mind that this is what it's supposed to be like, or and this is okay. And from the things that I know about that, a lot of the things that happen in there are not okay,
Yeah.
in the way that, you know, the woman is treated and stuff. And so I think it creates such a unhealthy picture that then we carry into
Hmm.
our marriages,
Yeah.
um, you know,
Yep.
and that makes me think too. And I'm jumping ahead a little on some stuff I wanted to talk about, but since we're in that area, I think that's where a lot of people have turned to pornography, you know, in their marriage. And whether they think that pornography is a substitution, like we're not coming together anyway, so I might as well just look at this, or if they think
Hmm.
it's going to add to their marriage, like, oh, this will
Right.
help spice things up and make things better, and we'll get some great ideas. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on all that?
So I'm just going to be real honest and transparent and vulnerable with you in the audience. So
It's just me and you.
yeah, there's nobody else listening.
Yeah.
That's right. But you know, so my husband's never struggled, thank God, with pornography or any of that, and I'm so grateful that that's not been something that's been a part of, you know, for my journey with him. But after I had left my, which is another podcast for another time, but after I had walked away from my church that I grew up in, and sort of walked away from everything, and went and turned to drugs and all that stuff, I started getting involved in pornography, and I not involved in in the sense that I was doing it, but watching it.
Yeah.
And it sort of eked into the beginning phases of our marriage. And what I found for me was that I started to have a hard time focusing when we were together, because I would visualize what I had seen, those images and and then I had the expectation that I was supposed to be experiencing and having that same kind of experience that I had seen,
Yeah.
and so it was such a distraction in my mind, and it was such a and then you try to move away from it, and you're filled with shame and guilt. It is such, I hate giving the enemy such a, like a, it's a perfect tool to destroy a marriage,
Yeah.
because you're y- it is feeding the desire that God already put there for us, but it's perverting it to a place where you're never going to satiate that desire
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
because it's such a twisted idea of it. And so and then you sit there and go, well, something must be wrong in my marriage, something must be wrong with our sex life. It's not like this, it's not, you know so thankfully, I was released from that, and it took work, and it took renewing my mind and taking my thoughts captive, and it took focusing on my husband and focusing on all the things I love about him, and in that place, and the enemy will still try to slip himself in there in some way, to try to pervert again it, but just shutting it down immediately. But what's so frustrating, and I'm sure the audience can agree with this, is that now, I mean, back then, what was 20 plus years ago, you had to kind of work for it
Yeah.
to get it.
Yeah.
Now you can just go and watch a Netflix show, and it's almost borderline,
Yeah.
so then you're finding you have to almost monitor, like you said, what am I reading, what am I listening to, what am I watching? It's just everywhere, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not giving that healthy view of what it truly is. It's
Mm-mm.
not giving that view of what it really is a deeper, intimate connection, not just a quick feel
Yeah.
good in the moment kind of thing. And I think that's where I'm going to go into this next part here, because I loved where in this it talked about genital prime and sexual prime are entirely different, each occurring at opposite ends of your lifespan. And I thought this was so encouraging, because it says people don't reach their sexual prime until their 40s, 50s, and beyond.
That's
So,
right,
I mean,
that's
how many
crazy.
people really think that, I mean,
No.
think you
Mm-mm.
get to that stage and it's over. We're done,
Yeah.
hang up the hat. Um, and it says a flourishing sexual relationship takes emotional maturity, relational maturity, and spiritual health, all of which can take decades to achieve. If you depend on horniness to carry you a century of marriage, you're going to be sorely disappointed. If you're willing to build the kind of life, relationship, and spiritual vitality that energizes sexual intimacy, your best, most satisfying years, sexually speaking, may very well lie ahead of you. I mean, what
Amazing.
encouragement is that when you read that? Because it
Hmm.
does tell you that it's because it's based on emotional maturity, relational maturity, and your
Yeah.
spiritual health. And that's stuff that takes time, and it's time as you get older, you gain more and more wisdom um, in these areas. And that's
Yeah.
where it becomes, I think that's why it says it can be your most satisfying years that lie ahead of you, because you're so much more in tune with those areas, and you're more confident in who you are, and
Hmm.
maybe overcome things that have happened in the past. And I think that's when it just opens the door for these things to happen, which is why I think it says it can be some of your most satisfying years.
And this is so true, and it's also equally frustrating when you see so many couples that have been married for 20, 25 years, and that is the largest demographic right now of divorce. People who are getting divorced is
Yeah.
in that range. The empty nesters, and it's like, man, if and again, the work of the enemy to pervert or lie about something, to say, yeah, your sexual prime was early, now it's done and it's all tired and worn out, when really in reality it's hitting the reset button, because you have to start all over now, and get to that place of like you said, maturity and intimacy that just doesn't happen with a one night stand. It just doesn't. But the lie is that, it's old and tired and worn out. So find the new thing. Ironically, I think, and fact check me on this, everyone who's listening, but the divorce rate, I think in America, is like 60% for your first marriage, but then it jumps in second, third, and fourth, to the point where at your like third or fourth marriage, you're almost like 100% chance of divorce. Well, the reality is because the lie is it's better. There's something better out there. Better sex, better person, all those things. And so, yeah, I guess for me, I want to hear, because I know you and Sunny have been together longer than Michael and I have been married together longer. It's really actually been, I would say, the last 5 to 10 years of my relationship with Michael that have been the best, like in every way,
Yeah.
sexually, emotionally. So, I
And
mean, do we have,
what do you attribute that to? When you're how old, as you say this for our listeners?
say again? I didn't hear the last
How
question.
old are you? So,
So 45,
yeah.
and Michael and I met him at 23, and we did it all wrong. So we met, had a baby, got married, kept having babies. So I tell my kids all the time, if your dad and I can sit here and be happily married and have done it, and successfully, anybody can, because we went through just immediate family, immediate, going into being parents and having to care for them. We hardly got to date at all. It was probably more based originally on that sexual attraction, that physical attraction. So I would say, and then just me coming from such a broken history, a broken family, a broken idea of what a good marriage looks like, or, I'll tell you the one thing it wasn't easy and no work. It was commitment, work, effort on both parties to meet the needs and love on each other. And then, of course, number one is God. I mean, if you both are walking intimately with the Lord, and number one, and then trying to, you know, love each other the way God calls us to love each other, and serve one another the way God calls us to serve one another, then you've got a good chance. And if commitment, which I'll never forget Dr. Dobson saying this years ago when I listened to one of his podcasts or radio programs, that said the number one trait for a healthy marriage is commitment, because your feelings are going to they're going to change. They're going to ebb and flow. You're going to, find yourself incredibly attracted one day, and then just think that they're the grossest, ugliest, like, what did I marry? You stink, you. I mean, all the things,
Yeah.
So the only thing that can is that commitment to it,
Yeah.
commitment to it. So,
Yeah. Well,
um,
and backtracking on that, because I mean, when you were talking about when someone's in a marriage, and they decide they want out, and they want to move on to greener pastures and stuff, and then they get married again and again and again. And the thing
mhm,
is, and it's you're going to drag whatever is going on with you into that next marriage. If
yeah,
there is not any sort of work toward healing, or figuring out what's going on, or if there's past trauma or abuse or anything that's happened, until those are dealt with, and you're going to bring that right in the next one, and
Mhm.
it's the same things are going to happen. And I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of it, is when you have that commitment. And I like the word, and I know it talks about that in this book too, the covenant
Mm,
relationship. Sunny and I, in February, it'll be 25 years we've been married.
mm.
And I can assure you, those have not been 25 easy years. They
Yeah.
haven't. We both drug so much baggage into our relationship. And then we started having kids pretty quickly too, because we were older by the time we got married. And just it took work, it took commitment, it took going through some stuff that we were like, you know what, I think I'm done. But then it was the
Hmm.
reminder of, no, you're not. You are committed. You made a covenant between you, your husband, and God, and you're going to do the work to get your marriage where God intends for your marriage to be. And again,
That's
just
good.
like you, so many of the years while the kids were growing up, you're so focused on your kids, which we had a conversation that's in the last
Hmm.
podcast
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. Go
But
back and listen to that one.
I know, right? Because you're so focused on them that a lot of your stuff with your marriage and husband get pushed under a rug.
Yeah.
And I think in that also, anything as far as your sexual relationship can too, because you're just parenting and you're worn out.
Yeah.
And so I think as you start furthering along in your marriage, and for us, the last, really, especially the last few years, we've done some intense work in ourselves, which
Mm,
then has
mm.
reflected back into our marriage.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'm with you that I look forward to the next many years, because I already see where God's taking it now, and I'm
Mm.
58 years old,
Yeah.
and it
I love
it
that.
yeah, so it's been, but again, it hasn't been easy. And there's
Hmm.
many times it's like, okay, what would happen if I left? What would that look like?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always say, when anyone starts feeling that way, really break that down. What would it look like? Because I
Yeah.
think it will make you go, oh my gosh, that is horrible, when you break down, the dynamics of what it'll do to your family. And there's just so much with that. And I always, anyone that's having marriage problems or whatever, I said, go back to when you got married and really think about who you fell in love with. Go back to your wedding day, go back to before that, and really just dig deep into, what is it about him that I really, really love. And
Yeah.
it's and asking God again, because you and I both, I mean, prayer, when we've gone through these difficult times, I have prayed and prayed and prayed, and I walk and I pray, and I just I feel like I fight for my marriage, and I
Yeah.
fight against the attacks, because if you don't, it just, things can sneak in
Yeah.
on your weaknesses, and before you know it, you may be making choices you said you'd never make. And so,
And and
yeah.
I am already a pretty like feeling driven person by nature. So if I'm not feeling it, it's, I'm sort of like, all right, one of the hurdles I've had to get over in my marriage is if I don't feel it, I still pursue it because I know that right feelings follow right actions.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that. I've had to, and it's so funny because I have almost all feelers in my house except for my husband. It's just so funny and ironic. But who are all keyed in. We're all keyed into each other. We're all picking up. Are you mad? Is everything okay? Are you doing all right? And I'm just like, dear, just stop it. But one of the things I've had to say, especially to the girls, is you're not a slave to your emotions. You're not a slave to your feelings. You actually have the ability to rise above those things and maybe just embrace the thing that you maybe don't aren't feeling.
Yeah.
But I love what you said earlier. I just want to circle back a little bit about what you said about working on you. I think you and I both have had so much pruning and growing over the last several years, for me, for sure.
Yeah.
And I would say to anybody that whatever you think is the problem of your marriage, or the man, or, in it, may be more about your own self. And that's was completely and so true for me.
Yeah.
These inadequacies, these feelings of discontentment, I was reflecting them onto him. And, oh, well, this must be what, and like you said, then you like, okay, well, maybe if I I go do this thing, this will satisfy me.
Yeah.
If you can sit down with yourself and with the Lord and really work on who you are in Christ, what does God want to reveal about himself to you? There's so many layers of myself that God has pulled away at, so many insecurities, so many false identities, false messages. I think that I'm not, and I want to get back to the sex conversation, because I do think that does play a role in it for sure. But working on your own stuff and being honest with self and honest with God, and I realized that so much of the things I thought were him were really me. And it just was easier for me to just be like, well, I'll just, start over. Or if only he was more like that. If only he was funnier. If only he was this and you didn't have so much hair. It's silly things, though, that you sit there. And I think it's because it gives you, well, it's easier. It's easier to put it on someone else,
Yeah. It's
than
not
to sit
hard.
down and do the work.
It's not easy to point back to yourself.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
an easy thing to do, that inner work, that inner looking. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
So,
that's awesome. Um, okay. I want to let's see. I'm going to go down here to where it is talking about, let's see. God's plan for sex is better than anything we could have thought up on our own. Christians should lead the way in this endeavor. We worship God when we enjoy his creation, and sex is part of his creation. But marriage is the necessary context in which sex reaches its supreme beauty. Context is everything. Take sex out of its intended context, and a beautiful thing can become an agent of destruction. The biblical context for a flourishing sex life is marriage and love. Since God is love, we know that every healthy act of sex must be rooted in love, must be governed by love, and must be an expression of love. When we clearly know and love God, we can accurately see and understand sex, and we can freely enjoy it. Scripture affirms time and time again that sex in marriage is not only God's plan, but also a splendid gift that is ours for the taking, and one to be enjoyed throughout our married lives. I mean, so much,
amen.
so much in that. I know, right? And there is so much
So
scripture,
good.
and we will be sharing some of that too. But it's in the context of marriage that we are definitely talking about today, not outside of that. And it's just clearly so different when you are in the context of marriage, and when we're talking about the things that God created and ordained for a marriage. And I think it's one of those things that it's hard for a lot of people maybe that do have issues or difficulties understanding that God created this for a husband and wife, not outside of that, and created it for that. And he created it to be beautiful. And I know for me, it took me many years to understand and believe that, too, just from a lot of my past stuff. And it truly is something that you have to do the work to, and do the work. When I say do the work, with God, with yourself, and to be able to come to a place of understanding of what this truly means.
Yeah. I was remembering when you were reading that, which I think this is an interesting piece of this. I'll never forget one night when I was struggling with my thoughts, and we're in the middle of having sex. And I never had done this before, but I prayed and said, bless, help me to just enjoy this with him and be and not be thinking. And immediately I was brought into focus and I was able to be with my husband, and it was in a healthy mindset and all that. And I remember thinking, why did I take so long to think about praying over my sex life with him? And I think that the reason, at least for me, but I would love your opinion on this, is that I think because sex has become something so perverted and so not what the intention, and not like you said. I mean, when you go read the Song of Solomon, or Song of Solomon,
Songs. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I mean, my gosh, like clearly, what a beautiful depiction of how it's supposed to look, and the love between, and the passion and the care and the tenderness. But because that, I think our society, especially here in America, have just really perverted and corrupted it.
Yeah.
I think even inside a healthy Christian home, it's like this taboo. We don't talk about it, or we're not going to pray about that. Like that's, we don't.
Yeah.
And yet I think God is anxiously sitting there waiting to be invited into something that he already ordained to be part of, that he
Yeah.
already planned to be part of. So, yeah, I think coming to the Lord with your sex life as
Yeah.
a individual, or I mean, for me, praying that God would build up my attraction, build up my desire, help me to desire him more, have all been played a part in being in the position where we're at right now, and
Yeah.
where I'm at in my sex life. And the other thing, and I don't want to get too far ahead or jump around, but you'd asked me before, like, what are the things that you've done to maybe be in a place right now outside of the work on yourself, and all the things like that. Michael and I, also have tried to make a personal commitment to each other that we don't let a week go by. I mean, there's kind of a like, so it's usually at least once, but more like twice a week, that it's like we try to come together. And any more than that, I think can drive a wedge. It's funny because on just a purely biological level, they say that when you are hugging someone, kissing someone, touching somebody for 20 seconds or longer, it actually changes the chemicals in your brain to become more attached emotionally to that person. So isn't that so interesting that you wouldn't think something physical could help maybe the emotional distance that you're feeling with your partner? But I think there's a reason why the Bible says don't stop coming together. And I think it's because it's also a very emotional and mental piece too,
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
connection.
Well, and that's going to bring me into the next part, but I want to backtrack a little bit on what you were talking about too, is about, praying in that. And it is such an important point, because I think, like you too, I didn't really think much about praying about that part of my life, as far as, Lord, help me to have the desire for my husband. Help me to love myself, love my body, love everything, where I'm not inhibited in,
Mm-hmm.
giving myself away. Help me to see sex the way that you created it, and not the way that our culture and the world has put it in our heads. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when we're praying those, God honors that you are reaching out to him and praying about that. And also in your day, um, think about it and pray about it and ask, give me the desire for my husband tonight. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you're constantly praying, just like you would anything else, um, you're going to grow in that area, and it's going to, God's going to keep working in that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I love that you brought that up because it's so important. Um, and I'll probably even put some of these Bible verses in the show notes so they're out there. But this kind of goes into what you were talking about how anything longer than like a week feels like it creates a distance, like that emotional
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
connection's not there, which I think is so true. Now there are instances, so of course we're just talking from, you know, things for us and what we've learned, but there's going to be instances when someone's, you know, pregnant or after they've had babies or whatever, you know, illnesses where maybe there's a little more time, but it doesn't mean that there's still not that connectedness, you know, that togetherness. But Song of Songs 1:9 is where it talks about it presents the picture of a man who glorifies in his wife's sensuality and who assures her that her presence, beauty, and desirability make him stronger and more capable as a man.
Mm.
He can be more and do more as a sexually satisfied man. I know if Sonny's listening, he's in the back, you know, he's going, yes, yes, that is so true. But it is true. And we'll dig a little deeper on it. But it says sex within marriage becomes a powerful force for good, allowing a man to have more energy, more zest for life, more engagement in both his marriage and his parenting, and more zeal to serve God and to succeed in his vocation. Men can tend to feel rejected and not loved. And when he is loved by his wife sexually, it's like he blossoms into another person. Um, Men being
Mm-hmm.
sexually desired means that they feel accepted, appreciated, and that someone wants them. The way their brain works is if his wife doesn't want him sexually, then she doesn't want him, period. And that makes them feel alone and rejected and affects their identity. You can see that he holds his head a little higher and his whole day is different when he's sexually desired. Starting out the day like that gives you a sense of confidence about yourself, and it brings a new force and confidence and even creativity when he goes to the office, goes to work, wherever it is, when he is connecting with his wife. And all that I think was such an eye opener to me also that I didn't realize for a long time. I feel like a lot of um, marriages fall into the he just always just wants sex. It's just nothing. It's nothing about me, and you know, it's just about what he wants. And I think when you hear this and you realize that it makes them stand a little taller. They feel
Mm-hmm.
when they know their wife wants them, desires them, loves them, seeks them out. I truly do. It helps them not to feel rejected. It's where, I mean, God made them this way, He wired them this way to that is how they emotionally connect with us. Where for a female, we connect through the emotions. For me, it's the quality time. It's the, you know, it's the things that cause us to come together on an emotional level. But that was a part of the book. I thought it was like, wow, that is
Mm-hmm.
so true. And if you're not having that in your marriage and you're going 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 6 weeks, you know, whatever, it's like that distance grows more and more and more, and it opens the door for other things to get in to possibly, you know, disrupt that
Absolutely.
marriage.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, and I have been trying. I'm not perfect, but I try to make an effort to never deny him. So
Not
we have
always easy.
it's not. And I was just talking to another client yesterday, and I've told him this, and he's here somewhere, so he might be listening. He knows what this
Yeah,
conversation was going to
yeah.
be
Now
about.
he's going to remember you said you're not going to deny me.
I know, and I'm not. I haven't. There are nights, but he always wants to at like 11 o'clock at night, and so the other piece of all of this is just the communication factor, and because I remember years ago hearing that, women are like crock pots, we're slow, we got to take some time to get us going and get us warmed up and hot kind of thing. And it ain't going to happen at 11 o'clock at night.
Not an
Like,
air
you know,
fryer.
no, no. And so, instead of me, because what would happen is I would, because I wouldn't want to deny him, and then he would enjoy, I wouldn't, because physically just couldn't, and that's another part of this conversation too, is understanding your own body and understanding what happens with women, and how we're wired differently in that way. Men can at any time, and we don't work like that. Like, but trying to force yourself to do it and then be upset about it is just poor planning and poor, so I told him, I said, we've got to work on not doing this at 11 o'clock at night, because if you want me to enjoy it too, then it's got to be a different time. So and I think I wrote something in the notes that, there's an element to this where when you are coming from a godly standpoint, a servant standpoint, that there are times, and I've communicated, like, it's not responding, honey. Like, it ain't gonna happen. But then shifting my motivation in that moment to be all about him, and enjoying, letting him enjoy, and enjoying that gift that I can give him, and so again, going back to the whole, it's not always about you, and it's not about, the enjoyment maybe I'm going to get out of it. But when you're both working from a love standpoint, from a God standpoint, where you're trying to just serve one another, it is beautiful, because there is this ability to be able to choose something that maybe is not in that moment for what you want or need, for the sake of your partner, because it is what he wants and needs. And that kind of parallels a little bit what you just read, which is just, it's so true that there is something that releases inside of a man when he is cared for in that way frequently, and it's such a fascinating thing to think of, because it's just not how we operate. You and I don't operate like that. But the cycle, or this beautiful cycle of when you're doing that for him and then he's meeting your emotional needs, it's like this perfect, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
You both are servicing the need. But touching on the enjoyment factor of it, I really feel like the women here, if you are rolling into bed at 10 o'clock at night and thinking that if you're struggling right now with feeling like, I don't enjoy it, it's not, or like what you said in the beginning of your notes, where we're married now, so it's all boring and not fun anymore. Well, yeah, if you're rolling into bed at 10 o'clock after you just serviced your family, cleaned your house, gone to work, done your workout, whatever, and you brush your teeth, wash your face, and you're laying there just dreaming about bed and thinking that your body's going to respond well, you're totally, going to set yourself up for a disaster. So I would say, if it's possible, one of the things Michael and I have been trying to do is day sex. I mean, and let me tell you, people, it is a game changer for women. For me, it is a game changer.
Yeah.
And without getting into too much detail,
To share, because when you were talking about that 11 o'clock, that does not work. And I mean, I am an early to bed woman, and I'm up at the crack of dawn. And scheduling, there is nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean that it makes it boring or whatever. But I think sometimes we have to do that, and that's why I was going to ask you. So yeah, so share on that about your day sex. I mean, share about your day sex, but share. Yeah, it's like getting to that. I think that understanding of, and I think it even talks about it more in this book, or it's one of my other ones, but where just sit down and have the conversations.
Yeah.
We don't have enough of these conversations because it can be uncomfortable. but get this book and sit down and read it together. I
Yeah.
think probably by the end you will be having a good time and enjoying it. But
Yeah.
it's like, so share for
Yeah.
you. I mean, so you
Yeah.
guys found a way to make things work with your schedule, and I think that's
Yeah.
important.
I mean, you know, um, he has been with work. He has been home a lot in this last year. He's been able to work from home, and so we've tried to make opportunity. And I told him, I said, because his big thing, and I think this is important for a lot of men, is that you're enjoying it as much as they're enjoying it. And so for him, I mean, I'd be like, baby, you're gonna be here for about a half hour. Like, like this is not gonna, this is, I don't, you just go, like, just do your thing, because it ain't gonna happen. This body is not responding. And so I said, I think I did. I said, let's try a different time in the day, like if we can, and for him, it doesn't. And I don't know if this is all men, if it's just him, but it doesn't matter what time of day. It's like when it's on, it's on. So I said, if it doesn't matter to you, then let's work around me. And I would say to your audience too, that is another key element, is not to be afraid to say, here's what I need. Here's what is, I mean, we've been in the middle of making love where I've said, hey, can you not do that? Can you do this instead? And, and it is weird. And you do kind of feel a little bit like vulnerable and a little like, oh, but you're working together to to enjoy it more, to look forward to coming back to it, and setting yourself up for those future times to have intimacy together, like it. So the communicating,
Yeah.
huge. I mean,
and
trying new
and
things, trying different things, trying different times, different ways,
right,
all of it.
whatever works in your marriage and with your schedules, and for those that still have kids at home or those that don't, it's all a matter of figuring out together kind of what works. And
Yep.
um it's I know another piece of this too, it talks about in here, is the sexpectations,
Hmm.
your sexual expectations and how much they shape the entirety of your marriage and influence what we assume and expect throughout every season of our relationship. It says each one of us approaches sex with a set of beliefs that have been shaped and influenced over time, which then all these factors play a role in it. And I think that kind of backtracks to, what we were talking about before, in what you grew up with and what was modeled for you. And,
Yeah.
I'm like you, that wasn't modeled well in my home either. And so you really don't know what to expect, or you don't have a healthy expectation of what that is supposed to look like. And it's like, Sunny and I have talked before, we have an expectation. Maybe he's coming home and he's thinking, he's got this expectation of what's going to happen, and I'm clearly way over here on the other side. And when you both have these expectations of something that's going to happen, and then they don't mesh, it's not a good thing. And I think the
Mm-mm.
expectations of what we grew up with and what we're modeled, and just play such a huge part in this piece of a marriage too.
Yeah. And let me tell you, the Lord has been working on expectations in me beyond just my marriage. And what's the right word? Expectations is like the thief of so many things, because you, there, ultimately you're acting as though you have control over something, I guess, or you're setting something up when you don't really know. And so that's been a theme for me, is to not expect so much, from whatever, out of relationships, friendships, my marriage, my And my love language is, acts of service without me asking, which is kind of an expectation. And so one of the things I've been working on is saying, here's what I need right now. Like, this is what I'm needing. And that's been huge. I mean, just the other day, there was, going back to what you were saying about the piece, that for us it's more of an emotional, mental connection that we're feeling. And I had I had not I think I got like a little minor concussion at Costco.
Oh
I got
no.
out of my I got out of my car, and I didn't see a tree branch that I parked in front of, and a girl, I had my baseball cap on, and I ran into that thing as hard as I was like somebody took a bat to my head. Like I was like, I better not show up on TikTok or YouTube down the road with be like,
Yeah.
like people in Costco, fails in Costco or whatever. Anyway, I had called and just sort of like was telling Michael the woes of that, and I had come home and he was just so laser focused on work, but like what I needed was a hug and a kiss on the head and help with Costco. And he didn't even acknowledge me being home, and I knew he knew because I just said I was on my way. So, the old me would have probably just festered in that and sat there and gotten upset and irritated, and and then definitely wouldn't have wanted to have sex that night, right? Like that, because I just would have been building up such an animosity and hurt and everything. So I just came to him and I just said, babe, I just really needed you to just give me a kiss and love on me. And, you know, so back to the communication factor, I think expressing your need and expressing what uh, is going to make this better for you, or how it is only helpful, especially with men, because as much as we want to try to make them, they're not mind readers, and they definitely don't know. And he even joked the other day. He's like, I don't know, sometimes you want it fast, sometimes you want it slow, sometimes you don't. He's like, I can't keep up with what your body's wanting. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So it's our job to say,
Yeah.
well, here's what I really need right now, or wow, that feels great. Like whatever you're doing, keep doing that. And again, it's very, and you said something in here, I'll see if I can try and find it on my end, but about being vulnerable. Uh, and I think that's a really important element to that, is that there's so much vulnerability in, let's see,
Well,
maybe you
and
can help
you
me
have
parse
to
with it.
be in your relationship where you
Oh, there it is.
feel safe and secure to be
Yeah.
vulnerable, that you're not going to get laughed at or shamed or I don't know, made fun of them anyway, or
Mm,
acting like that's ridiculous. It's like
yeah.
it needs to be a place where you feel safe to be fully vulnerable, because
That's huge.
it's hard.
Yeah. It's right here where you, I guess page 32 from your book. It says the problem in our sex life offer us the problems, excuse me, in our sex life offer us the opportunity to take our relationship to the next level. They pave the way for greater understanding, more meaningful connection, and deeper vulnerability. And then I just sort of noted sexual intimacy can be a revealer of emotional or mental hangups that need to be dealt with. And for some marriages, that's hard to do. And so, I think that there's nothing more uh, exposing than when you're in that moment together. And if there is any kind of trauma, hurt, either in your own personal past that hasn't been dealt with, or together that hasn't been dealt with, that can cause a big hang up. And and even without your partner knowing it, um, because of the lack of expression or communication, could lead to resentment with sexual intimacy, because you're not being honest or allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And so I would just encourage women to, like, there's things that you haven't dealt with in your past, or even within your marriage. Maybe there was a time where, I mean, and I've told Michael this. I said, okay, right now I do just kind of feel like a piece of meat. Like, I haven't felt connected to you, and yet I'm still servicing your needs, and I know it's so important, and I want to do that, but now it's starting to feel like I'm just a piece of meat. And so, and of course, when I said that and I was able to get that out, he felt terrible, and we were able to talk about that. But I can't imagine if that was left inside and then you continue in this not good, not healthy place, that it can cause some emotional wounds, some wounds that fester, So that needs to be communicated.
Yeah.
You need to be able to say how you're feeling in that moment, or how something had felt that didn't feel right to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to just in everything we talked about with the expectations, and if we're not communicating, and it's not always easy for me personally to do. It's not always easy for me to tell Sonny, what is going on, or what I was expecting of him, or what I need, or whatever it is. And but then when you think about it, when they're over here going, well, I had no idea that
Yeah.
was what you needed from me right now, or whatever. But yet, like you said, being the mind reader, we're like, well, you should have known. You should have
Yeah.
caught
Seemed
on
pretty
by my
obvious.
cues, or my facial expressions, or I know and it is those expectations. Whenever we have placed those on each other, with Sunny and I mean, that's usually when we end up, in a conversation then later about it, because it's like, oh, well, I was kind of thinking this, and I'm like, well, I was thinking this, and like we were so, far off from being on the same
Mm,
page, um,
mm,
and so,
yeah, that's
okay,
good.
let's see what else. I know there's so
Mm,
much I want to cover on this. I'm trying to think about, our listeners and women, and the things that we haven't covered. The things that we can give them tools, and we're no
mm,
therapists or counselors, or we are just two women that
yeah,
desire for marriages to stay together, for marriages to thrive as you age, to realize that your marriage can thrive after,
yeah,
for April 20 years and me 25, that you still can have a very healthy, intimate sex life. And I want women to know that. And it's like what tools we can give them, and input for them to be able to feel some hope in that too. I think is what I would love to try and think about, what we can share with everyone.
yeah. I think just to reiterate a couple things, and maybe if women are taking notes or whatever, but number one is the two of you having a again with expectation, maybe a standard, that'd be a good one to say, is we will not let this much fill in the blank time go by of not coming together. Like, you know, so for Michael and I, it's once a week, but we really strive for twice a week. We were for a while there trying to do every other night, and that was a tall order for me. That was a while back. I mean, I think now that the kids are older, and you know, you can. I mean, I think you said this, which I'd love for you to talk on this a little bit too. But that as empty nesters, because a lot of the hindrances is just all the kids in the house and feeling like you can't get time, or you can't get alone enough and quiet the house quiet enough to be able to just do that, to be together. But that would be one. And then oh, setting yourself up for success as a woman, and knowing your body, being in touch with your own body enough to know, I know if I save this until I'm about to crawl into bed, that it's going to be a miserable experience for me. I'm not going to like it, and I'm not going to want to, and so therefore I am not going to suggest, and whatever that is for you, if you need to, like, uh when he gets home from work, and go, hey, Like we're slipping in the room because you know that you're setting yourself up and you're for not or not being disappointed and him not being disappointed, but whatever you've got to do to so that your own body can respond well. I mean, you're the only person that knows how your body is going to respond. And I know for me, 11 o'clock at night is not the time. It's not the right time if I want to enjoy it. And let's face it, if you're not enjoying it as well to a degree, I mean, that's a recipe also for failing because you're eventually going to burn out, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so those are two off just the top of my head real quick about tools that I think can really be helpful. Like
Yeah.
picking a limit to, or sorry, that we will not go this much time without coming together. And I really personally think it needs to be weekly. I just do. I hear of people who go months and months of not, and I don't know what you and Sunny try to set as far as, but I can feel and sense like this slow separation start happening after about day 3. I can feel it.
Well, and
So
I think that's the key too, and I think that's where it is for everyone to find where that is for them, that is comfortable for them in their marriage, because it is. I think it's true. As the days keep going by, I think you start feeling that connection, getting just a little bit further,
mhm.
and then maybe you're not connecting on many other levels. During that time either. So, I mean, the tools of like what we were talking about, looking at your schedules, looking at when things could happen that are good for both of you, that are in, doesn't mean you have to set in stone every Tuesday, and then, well, Tuesday comes along and something important comes up. It doesn't mean it has to be rigid and set in stone, but like y'all did, you just find some different times and some different
Mhm.
ways to make it happen. And yes, as you become an empty nester, of course, it does get easier. Sunny and I travel on different hours a little bit because he can stay up later than I can, and I like to get up early. So it
Mm.
takes working, with those schedules too,
Yeah.
um, to
Yeah.
find that. But I think also one of the things that, if I could encourage women, is even when you may not feel like you're desirable, like, oh my gosh, he's going to, all he's going to do is look at how much weight I've put on, or my jiggly stomach, or whatever. Um, and you're your own worst critic most of the time. And I know for me, that's never anything I've ever had to worry about for my husband. And I'm thankful for that because, I mean, to this day, he still thinks I'm the most incredibly, beautiful woman in the world. And that's what you want to feel. You want to know that they
Yeah.
could care less about that roll on your belly or that toe that's longer than the other one, or whatever it is. And I think so. It's getting comfortable and learning to love yourself and the beauty in that, and whatever that takes for you, um, to feel that, and know that you're not always going to feel that desire. You're not always going
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
feel that. But like we talked about, I think the other huge tool, the main tool, is praying. And pray if you're in your marriage right now and you just feel like absolutely zero desire for your husband, or um, you feel like your intimate life is just tanked and gets worse. Start praying over it. Just really pour
Mhm.
into it and pray over it. And I would also encourage reading books like this,
Yeah.
that just reiterate and confirm what married biblical sex is all about, what it really is. And maybe, like I said, reading it with your husband. And there's a couple other books that I will put in the show notes too, that are really good. And I know some friends of mine did an actual study with couples, and it was on the Song of Songs, and I heard it was pretty steamy.
He
Uh,
heated.
Brittany hates it. And I had to admit, I'm like, I don't know. That seems kind of weird if I'm with a bunch of other couples. I'm not sure. I think it depends on who you're with. I think
Yeah.
all of us
Yeah.
we would have a good time and probably a lot of laughs if we were in that study together.
Yeah.
And I
Yes,
know
it would.
they made it enjoyable and fun too. But
That's awesome. That's
I
fun.
mean, I think prayer and going back to just really what God says about sex, and you know, there's so many. Oh, I know. I wanted to read on this one real quick on the verses because it says God created sex to bring about unity. So that's in
Mm.
Genesis. Hebrews, pleasure. Song of Songs, love and comfort. Genesis, deep joy, and Proverbs. And you know, I can list those verses out, the actual verses too, um, because I think it's important to have references to go back to and look
Yeah.
at, you know, truly what God says sex is about. Um,
I think too, and I'll just speak for myself, going back with the grass is greener on the other side, or I like what you just said about going down that road of asking yourself or what would that look like, or you know, you said something
yeah,
about paint the picture of what would that actually look like, and I think sometimes we fall into this fantasy. For me, I fell into a fantasy world of what it could be like, you know, and again, because I also came from not having a good reference point, there's lots of things that played parts in that. The movies I watched, you know, and let's face it, you know, I think there's a love story inside the heart of all of us that, in my opinion, can only be really fulfilled in Christ. I just really do. And I don't even know that the complete fulfillment of that is going to happen here on earth. I think that there is a longing, you know, Paul talks about a groaning and a longing. The problem that what we've gotten ourselves into is we try to fill those longings and think that we can maybe get them through experiences and just different various things, right? So I would say that for me, not letting myself kind of putting perimeters on my own self and my own thought life and my own, and you know, when the Bible says that we need to, you know, take thoughts captive, because that I am such a I have a very vivid imagination, and I so you know, you'd go down that road, I'd go down that road of imagination, and then my reality fell flat. My reality was always a disappointment for me. So I think a tool that I would encourage people is try really hard to maybe even write down like thankfulness of what you've got in your marriage, thankfulness for your husband. Start imagining and thinking about all the things that he is. I remember when we went to a therapist years ago together, and she said, "Tell me all the things that you appreciate about him. Tell me all the things that you really enjoy about him." You know, so I'm listing them off. I'm listing them off, and by the time I was done, she was like, "Do you know that I have some women that if they could just have one of those things on their list, they would be happy. Just one." And it really made me realize how I was giving way too much time and attention and focus on all the things that I felt I was lacking or he was lacking, that I didn't appreciate the amazing things. So, and again, going back to that, we don't have to be a slave to our feelings. If you're not feeling it in that moment, one of the best things you can do to counter that feeling is sitting down and being thankful for all the things that he is. I mean, it's the Bible talks about thankfulness and rejoicing being an antidote for sadness and disparity and all of it. So why wouldn't it apply in our marriages? Why wouldn't it apply when we're not feeling it, you know, with our mate, with our spouse? So for me, a lot of it was taking those thoughts captive and not putting so much, well, again, expectation, but
yeah,
letting my mind wander to these ideas of what I thought it could be or should be, you know?
yeah. Well, I think that whole gratitude piece and writing things down about them, because anytime we go to gratitude and thankfulness, and um, you know, it can change our mindset. It can change the direction of our thoughts and what we're thinking, and praying, Lord, give me the mind of Christ,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that gratitude and just thinking about, we did a similar thing before in counseling too. And it's just when you stop focusing on what you think is wrong and all the faults are,
Yeah.
and you look to the good, you realize that, wow, he's not as bad as I thought he was,
Yeah.
and because sometimes a lot of it comes from us. It comes from
Mm-hmm.
something within us and something that we need to work through. And I think
Yeah.
it's being
Yep.
aware of that. Um,
Absolutely.
and then the last thing I'm going to share is on a book called God, Sex, and Your Marriage. And this was on the covenant love. And it said, sex and marriage go together because sex is the physical symbol of the lifelong covenant promise. It is how we celebrate and remember with our bodies what we have to do with our entire lives. God created sex to be the most tangible expression of the joy of fully giving oneself in covenant. And
Mm, I love
I
that.
loved that statement. And yeah, that was
Well,
for me.
and it makes sense when you realize that it's what the enemy wants to destroy, because
Yes.
it's such a marker of the covenant between us
Yeah.
and God.
Yeah.
And I can't think of, and I don't know if you can, but I can't think of one person that I know that has ended their marriage and is more successful in their life, or with that there's not some kind of a destruction, whether it be with the kids, with their own self or whatever. And I think that the enemy wants to come in and kill, destroy, and and the lie is, it's so much better out there. It's so much better if but when we rest in that covenant assurance, like you said, and we push through, the reward is so much greater. I mean, and
Yeah.
I was just gonna, as just wrapping up too, but you had said something way early on about oh shoot, what things had kept or helped us or helped me or whatever. One of the biggest things was having I have a few different people in my life that have been divorced. Were married for a long extended time and then divorced after about 25 years. And speaking into me and saying it is not better on the other side, that we believed, that I believed it, I thought it would be, and that it is absolutely not. It destroys your relationship with your children. It destroys, and that every relationship, this one individual, she had gone through three other relationships until she settled on the one she's with now, after having this long marriage. And she said, she goes, they're all work. All of it is work. All of it requires time and effort and work. And it's this idea that, like, you're not going to have to, or that sex is going to be better with another partner, or all of a sudden now your sexual inadequacies or sexual issues are going to dissolve when you have a different partner, is such a lie. It's such a great
Yeah.
deception, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I can't see you on my screen now, so we are going to hope that it's continuing to work. I mean, I heard every word you said, so I think we'll go
I can
ahead
see
and wrap
you.
up. Yeah,
I
it says your internet is not working properly, but so
Oh,
we will wrap up and hope that you are still on the screen to anyone that does watch this on YouTube. Um, but I think, there's so many things that we could talk about and dig deep in this subject. I think
mhm.
I just pray that everyone hears April and I's heart for marriages and for healing in any areas that a marriage may need, or the husband and wife or may need individually, and that we can just be an encouragement and a voice. Because I'll backtrack on that, and your face just popped up. That April and I both have said before how long we've been married, but it has not been a perfect road. It has not been an easy road. There's been, so many things within the marriage. And if we can, I'm not speaking for April too, but I know she agrees. If we can just help save one marriage, if we can help whoever might be listening to be encouraged by this and seek out help and to do everything you can to save and protect your marriage and your family, because the enemy wants to do nothing more than destroy families. And my husband and I have been determined these years when we get into conflict and trouble that he does not get that. He does
Mm-hmm.
not get my family. And when there has been issues, that's what I pray. I'm like, you do not get my family, you do not get my husband, you don't get my kids, you don't get my marriage, and I put on the armor of God and I fight for it. And when you fight for
Mm.
your marriage and for your intimacy, and I mean, you will see amazing things happen. And so
It's so good. That's so
that's
good,
what,
Carla. And
yeah,
I just really quickly, I want to say you said fight for your marriage and fight for, I think that's another tool that
yeah,
is, it's a battle. It
yeah,
really is a battle,
yeah,
and this, place of maybe indifference or just sitting there and not really an active position is not going to get you into a healthy place in your marriage and in your sex life.
yeah,
It requires work, it requires commitment, it requires tools. Re- you know you've got to be, both of you have to be ready and in a place of saying, I want to change this, and we're going to fight for it. And like you said, praying, we have the authority to take down strongholds. We have the power and the authority to take down those lies. So you claim your marriage and your sex life, and you tell the enemy he has no place in it. I love that you just said that you and Sonny do that. And
yeah,
you rightfully say it is not yours to have. You have no part in this.
yeah,
And then worship and praise God for the gifts He's given you,
yeah.
and the things that He has given, and focus yourself on that, because where there is worship, the enemy can't thrive.
Yeah, amen. And I've
So,
gone through our house and prayed through it and anointed it when I really feel like things are coming against us. And
mm,
it's just what we have to do. And our families and our marriages are so worth it. And that's what I came to realize over the years. It's worth it, and it's worth the fight, and it's worth my kids having a good, healthy view of what marriage looks like, because they've seen us go through the stuff, but they've seen us fight for our marriage,
yeah,
through Jesus, um, and
it's so
so I
good. It's so
just
good.
I think that's where a good spot to end it, because
Okay.
I think both of us, that's our hearts, and
Absolutely.
just want people to fight for their marriages and their families,
Agreed.
and
Yeah.
know that good um, sex can be great and amazing through the covenant of marriage, and we just
Amen, sister.
pray that
Amen.
over everyone. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna wrap it up. But thank you. I always love sitting
This
here
is
chatting.
fun.
I know you never know what April and I are going to chat about next. So
It's true. It's
stay
true.
tuned.
It's
There's
true.
no telling what she'll be back with.
Thanks,
But
honey.
thank
This was so
you
fun.
for listening, everyone. Thank you, April, and I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening, everyone.